I have an idea for an Easter series, and I think it's pretty good. John chapter 20, verses 19 through 23. It's when Jesus appeared to the disciples for the first time after his resurrection, and he told them, "Peace be with you." But he told them twice. Why did he tell them twice? Well, that's what I'm going to explain in this teaching, and these two eggs are going to help me explain it. Welcome to Equipped. I'm Mario Escobedo. Chances are you're a pastor or somebody who teaches the Bible at your church. Well, if you are, I'm glad you're here because through this channel, I want to help you deepen your understanding of the Bible so that you can be more effective in equipping those who God has placed under your care. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, then crush that subscribe button, just like the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. I have an idea for an Easter sermon for you. And this sermon was one of the ones that I preached during our 2018 Easter sermon series, which was called 40 Days That Left No Doubt. And in that series, we focused on the 40 days after Jesus' resurrection and the different encounters that he had with his disciples during those 40 days. Now, the passage that we're going to talk about in this video is John chapter 20, verses 19 through 23, which is the first time that Jesus had an encounter with his disciples after his resurrection and during these 40 days. Let's look at the passage. Now, what's happening here is that this is the first encounter that Jesus had with his disciples after his resurrection. We find the disciples hiding behind locked doors because they're afraid of the Jewish leaders. This makes sense. They're probably thinking, if that's what they did to Jesus, what can we expect that they're going to do to us? So we find the disciples in a state of worry, anxiety, fear. And so it makes sense that the very first thing that Jesus tells them is, "Peace be with you." When the disciples see Jesus and they hear these words, verse 20 tells us that they were overjoyed. So that makes it a bit interesting for me that in this context of joy, that Jesus would again say, "Peace be with you," for a second time. It makes sense for me that the first time when we find the disciples fearful and afraid and worried, that Jesus would say, "Peace be with you." But when their mood changes and they're happy and overjoyed, why would Jesus say, "Peace be with you" again? Okay, now this is where things get interesting because I think that the reason Jesus said this phrase twice is because it has to do with the concept of peace. The Gospel of John was written in Greek, but I'm pretty sure it's more than likely the case that Jesus actually spoke either Hebrew or Aramaic when he was speaking to his disciples. And so the word that Jesus would have actually said was the word shalom. Before I continue, I want to let you know that I created an exclusive behind the scenes teaching on another sermon that I did as part of this series. That sermon was based on Acts chapter 1, verses 3 through 8, when Jesus told the disciples, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you." Now, to receive access to that exclusive behind the scenes teaching on that sermon, there's a link in the description of this video so that you can access it. Back to the teaching. The word shalom is a very rich and nuanced word. You and I know the meaning of the word shalom to mean peace, and by that we understand tranquility, being at rest, not being worrisome. That's how we understand shalom. And that is definitely what shalom means, but there is more to shalom than just peace and being at peace or being at rest. And I think that it's this additional concept or this wider, more nuanced concept of shalom that Jesus was communicating the second time he spoke, "Peace be with you," to the disciples. Because shalom also means to be complete, whole, lacking nothing. Let me illustrate this meaning of the word shalom. Here's an egg, and this egg is complete. It's whole. It doesn't have any holes in it, no cracks, absolutely nothing. This egg is whole. This egg is shalom. This egg, on the other hand, has a hole on the top of it. The fact that this egg has a hole right here tells us that this egg is not shalom. So here we have shalom, here we have not shalom. And so when Jesus says, "Peace be with you," or shalom to the disciples the second time, I think this is the concept that he was conveying. What do I mean by that? Well, just imagine what the disciples were thinking and feeling when they see Jesus for the first time. They abandoned Jesus. Peter denied Jesus. They all ran away. They didn't stand by Jesus at the most crucial moment of Jesus' ministry. They were feeling guilty. They were feeling incomplete. Jesus perceived this. And so what does he do? He speaks shalom. He's telling them, not only am I saying it's okay, everything's going to be all right, don't worry, I'm also restoring you. I'm speaking wholeness back into your life. I'm here to speak shalom, to speak wholeness into your life, despite what you did. It really is incredible what Jesus did here, because he restored the disciples to wholeness after they had been broken. And not only that, but let's look at what else Jesus did as part of this restoration. In verse 21, after the second time that he said, "Peace be with you," then he said, "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." So Jesus restored the disciples, but then he also commissioned them to continue the work that he had started. Now start thinking about how you can craft this idea into a sermon, especially for Easter, because Easter is a time when a lot of people who don't normally go to church, well, they're more open, they're more receptive to going to church if friends or family invite them. And so you're going to have them in your congregation. And this would be a great opportunity for you to speak to them about the wholeness that Jesus offers, because a lot of them are going to come, and as they're sitting in church, they're going to feel guilty. Man, I haven't been here in such a long time, and now I'm here just for Easter. What a hypocrite. I feel so bad. They're going to be feeling, maybe not to the extreme or the extent that the disciples were, but they're going to be feeling guilt because they've walked away from God. What a fantastic opportunity to tell them, listen, you're not the first one. You're not the only one who has ever given his or her back to Jesus. His very own disciples did it, but look at how he reacted to them. He restored them. He spoke wholeness into their lives, and he can do the same for you. Because I can guarantee you that people are going to show up on Easter Sunday that you haven't seen in a year, and they need to hear that they need to get closer to Jesus. Sometimes what's holding them back is that guilt that they feel like hypocrites, and we need to speak this to them and tell them, look, don't stay away from him because you think he's not going to accept you. He wants to speak shalom into your life just like he did with the disciples. Now, I have a question for you, and I'd love for you to share your answer in the comments. What are you planning to preach on Easter Sunday, or what have you preached on Easter in the past? Let me and the other members of this community know in the comments. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that with regards to John chapter 20, verses 19 through 23, you feel just a little bit more equipped. God bless, and I'll see you next time.